to our January the 10th professional development session for the Center for Music Education at Georgia College. I am Dr. Tina Holmes Davis. I'm the coordinator of graduate music education and the executive director of the Center for Music Education at Georgia College. And I'm very excited to talk to you today about differentiated instruction. So here we go. And I'll just say, you know this because you studied with me, William, but I like to teach very dialectically, so if anything comes up as we go, just go ahead and interject. All right, so I like to, in order to understand differentiated instruction, I like to start with Bloom's taxonomy, Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, and response to intervention, which most of you probably do in your schools. So you let's talk about Bloom's first. Do you know Bloom's?
So for me, I remember going over Bloom's. It's just a lot of times, like, at least in my experience, like, I know kind of the stuff. It just kind of the terminology and all gets kind of put on the back burner.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start with, I think, and most music, especially ensemble directors, live in Bloom's apply. So we say these are key signatures, play the key signature in this piece. And so we live there, which is kind of in the center of Bloom's taxonomy. So with differentiated instruction, we're going to either go up or down from apply because most of our people are going to be in apply. And then, because in differentiated instruction we may have various groups, when we go over here and we talk about zone of proximal development, which is Vygotsky's thing, then we have three options here. In the center is what they can do. And they don't need to do what they can do, which is where we get enrichment, because if they can already do it, then they're going to be bored, and when they get bored, they're going to misbehave. And then you get outside of what they can do is the zone of proximal development, which is what they can do with help. So this is, you know, whatever new thing we're talking about, and they're going to be able to do this, but they can't do it yet, right? And then outside that is what they cannot do. So let's drop back. You teach elementary, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. So our elementary chorus is not going to do Handel's Messiah, no matter what we do. There is no way in the world. They don't have the vocal space. They don't have the folds yet. And so, yeah, that is going to be outside. There is no place in the world where we're actually going to do Handel's Messiah with an elementary choir. But they might be able to do, I had, when I taught elementary school, in first grade we had to tie the shoes song because we had a rule at my elementary school that we didn't tie shoes after the first semester, you know, after December of first grade. So in first semester of first grade we had to tie the shoes song, and we practiced tying our shoes. And they could do that, but they couldn't tie their shoes yet. So the song was what they can do, but the tying the shoes was in their zone of proximal development. So we worked on a non-musical goal. So I said all of that to say this: when we're in Bloom's taxonomy and we want our class in apply, you know, these are articulations, apply the articulations in this piece of music. Then we have various groups who may need enrichment or remediation, and we still have the big group who's in apply. We want to put them in that zone of proximal development, something that they can do if they work together and if they have, you know, a more knowledgeable other or a guide. We don't want them in what they can already do because they're in groups. And if I'm in a group and I can already do it, then we're going to start wrestling and punching each other and playing cards and whatever it is they do. And we don't want them in what I can't do because then they're going to get frustrated and they're going to get mad and they're going to quit. Make sense? So when we're teaching, we have to use what we know, and we've already talked a lot, if you came through my programs, about diagnostic data. So we have given them some kind of a diagnostic assessment, and we know where that zone of proximal development is. And so we have the big group, group one, who's doing apply. And then we're going to have other groups who either need more enrichment or need more help. And, you know, in some situations, we may have adults. We may have, you know, music techs who can come in and tech this group. They can take this group and do this work with them. In some cases we may have parents, in some cases we may just have to have work on the iPads or the Chromebooks or whatever we use at our school. So that takes us to, I like the RTI model. It's as good as any. In the center here, RTI Tier 1 is that, that apply lesson. That is the lesson plan that when we dreamed it in our head was the lesson plan that left people cheering and, applauding, and we won Teacher of the Year. And we can expect, despite the way that they did this tiering here, we can expect 80% roughly of our students to succeed in Tier 1. So 80-ish% of our students should be able to apply. Now we can expect 20% to need extra help. This might be in RTI Tier 2 is two-tailed, which means that 20%, some of them might need enrichment, some of them might need remediation. Make sense? So we go back to Bloom's from here, and I know this is a lot of juggling things, but I find that we teach these things, but we don't teach people how to use them. So from here we go for our Tier 2 people, we go back to Bloom's. And our enrichment people are going to go maybe from apply to analyze, evaluate, and create. So they're going to move up. They're not going to do more work. They're going to do deeper work. So if we're doing articulation and group 1 is in play the articulations in this piece of music, then our Tier 2 enrichment people, depending on how their enrichment is based on their diagnostic, might be changing the articulations to change the style, and like doing an arrangement. And you can do this in MuseScore. You can actually have them doing notation, and if you have money you can do it in Sibelius, but I think MuseScore is free.
I use MuseScore all the time.
Yeah. So you could also, if you don't have to do notation every time you compose, especially with young people, you could do like a looping software where they record in maybe a thing and they can actually play the articulations differently and record it in and then loop it and change the style that way.
Can I say one
Please
thing
do.
about creation? Just because at the elementary level, like, I mean, I use technology for like the older kids a lot. We lost our iPads at the school, so one of my projects I like to do, I can't do anymore. But for example, like this past week, like when we're talking about creating, that can look like a lot of different ways. Like so for example, with my like first and second graders, one activity I do is like I set up chairs in the front of the room, and like I call up some kids, and like one kid sits in a chair that's like a quarter note, two kids that's two eighth notes, and so
I
on.
love
So
that.
it's like I feel like a lot of times when I've, especially like in the first like 2 or 3 years of my career, it's like when I think of creating, I'm thinking they have to actually be like writing something out, but that can look like a lot of different things, especially
Yes.
at the yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I like with our elementary students is to take the Orff instruments, your metallophones and xylophones if you have them, and take the bars off, leaving just the pentatonic scale for them, and then have them, I like to do speech rhythm. So, you write words about pizza or, whatever it is that the kids are talking about today, and then they play it on the pentatonic where there's absolutely no wrong notes. And if you want an enduring artifact, if you want student work samples, just record it. And you can either record as a group or as individuals. And I've seen people in elementary school line the kids up to do it so that they come up and they play their part and then they jump out of the way and the next person does. Just make sure that you have those consent to record forms for the students who do it. Thank you. That's a great point. Yeah, we can do, especially with the older students, the MuseScore, Sibelius, we can have them write music and actually write notation and things like that, but we don't have to. Create can be actually creating music instead of creating notation. But, so that's our enrichment group. Now, from apply, we might have a group of people that aren't ready to apply. Perhaps they don't understand articulation yet. So we're going to bop down to understand and remember, and we're going to review articulation so that they know what they're trying to apply. And one way that I like maybe to do this is to go, if you have devices, which you said you don't anymore. You can do it on musescore.net with your older people, and MuseScore does keep track at the top of how many they got right and how many they got wrong. So you could have them on whichever page does that, and then they have to get a certain percentage, and that's their grade or whatever for what they're doing. And once they get that percentage, they can try to hop back into the tier 1 group and apply. But guys, also you can only do what you can supervise. If you don't, you can't send first graders off into a room. You can't send sixth graders off into a room and have them work independently if you can't supervise them. Because anything that happens in that little room, anybody gets hurt, anybody gets an education that they shouldn't have with the sixth graders perhaps, that's on you. So maybe if you had devices and headphones, that group that's working on MuseScore could be over on the side of the room working with their headphones so you can still see them. Or maybe if you have helpers, then you can have somebody who sits in the room with them, maybe a parapro, a parent volunteer, whatever you've got. All right, so that's a lot. We've got Bloom's taxonomy, and I like to move up and down. So if we like to stay and apply and we don't have to, we might analyze, evaluate, and then we have less room to go higher, but more room to go lower. And I actually, with Bloom's, I like to, when I'm starting my unit, the first lesson in the unit is remember or knowledge or whatever it is, because we're teaching the concept. And then we bump up to apply. And then after LGPE, people like to do the evaluate. They like to record and have the students evaluate their own performance. I had a student teacher last semester who was doing that just for a normal concert. He was having the chorus students sing their concert piece. He was recording it just on the voice app on his phone and playing it back immediately and having them evaluate and then go to sectionals to work on what they heard. So you don't have to stay and apply. I've just noticed that that's kind of what we do. All right, so we have Bloom's, we have RTI, and we have the ZPD, the Zone of Proximal Development. That's kind of the way what I center my discussion of differentiation on. And so now we'll move on. So this is what we were talking about. Here's our group 1 plan, that tier 1 RTI plan. This is what everybody's going to do, that 80%. Then we have a small group enrichment, tier 2 enrichment. This is that group that is already knows the tier 1 plan. And you don't want the students who already know to be punished by trying to learn again what they already know. And then you have another group, which is going to be a small group, your remediation group. These are the kids that are frustrated with the group 1 plan because they don't know yet. All right, does that make sense? All right, good. Let's see. So here are some examples. Here, the blue or gray or whatever color that is, we are performing in various key signatures, which is a Bloom's apply. So our remediation group, they might be on musictheory.net. They might be a worksheet, whatever you've got, reviewing their key signatures and scale exercises. So key signatures writing, scale exercise may be playing so that they can get ready to play in the various key signatures. So that's really knowledge. The scale exercises might be closer to apply, but we're really back to knowledge. We're getting that foundational knowledge we need so that they can bump up. Remember, the goal of the remediation group is to get to the group 1, the everybody lesson. So what we're not going to do with these groups is we're not going to put 5 kids that we consider to be weak kids into the remediation group and just let them rot. Number 1, we have flexible grouping based on diagnostic data, right? You hear flexible grouping from your graduation coach, your academic, whoever, all the time. So that remediation group is going to change from unit to unit, perhaps based on what they're learning. And then if your remediation people, if they can, do whatever it is that you have them doing, they should be able to move from remediation back into tier 1. Your enrichment kids will probably stay in enrichment, but this is also a flexible group. They're not in enrichment all the time. These are not your gifted kids. Sometimes we have a kid that might even be in special education, but they're really good at music. And, maybe they had piano lessons before they came to you or whatever it is, and they're really good at music. So you might have a special education child in your enrichment group, and that's fine. But there's not one enrichment group that stays all year. That enrichment group is a flexible group. And again, now that one might stay. Those kids might not ever come back to tier one because they already know tier one. And these might be, if I'm an ensemble teacher, these might be the kids that I recommend for district honor groups, band, orchestra, chorus, all state groups, band, orchestra, chorus. I think at the elementary level, we a lot of times have an honor choir. I don't know if we have instrumental ideas a lot for them, but. All right, so another in green, another example might be performing in various styles or evaluate the effectiveness of the style intended in the performance. So we might listen to a march and we expect the march to march. So we listen to recordings of the march and we see, does this march march? Does that make sense? All right, good. So our remediation group might be working on symbols and sounds for articulation. Our enrichment group might be arranging excerpts in different styles, which would be, synthesis. So do you see how it actually might work in your lesson plan? I hate teaching just the theory and then leaving you to figure it out on your own. So you've got the theory, and this is an example of how it might actually work in your lesson plans. All right, beautiful. Number 5. So let's talk about RTI Tier 2 versus your IEP and 504 accommodations. These are not the same things. RTI Tier 2 is a flexible grouping, and you could have gifted students who need remediation in a certain area. You could have, as I said before, special education students who need enrichment. But so RTI over here on the left is everyone who needs either enrichment or remediation based on your diagnostic data. Yes.
I just want to clarify, like when we're talking about RTI tier 2, that's something that we determine like ourselves as the educator, right? Whereas like a 504 or IEP is like an administrative documentation with, input from the educator. But like
Beautiful,
basically
yes.
what I'm trying to understand is like RTI is what I determine, not what like they would have documentation or anything.
Yes.
Okay.
So RTI Tier 2, you've given a diagnostic of some sort, or you've paid attention and you've noticed, some things. And yes, you see that this child needs more help. You see that this child has already got it. When I taught elementary school, I graded by exclusion. So the only people that I actually graded were the people who needed extra help or, whatever it is. So these are the kids who might need RTI enrichment, the kids that I actually paid attention to. And the kids that I tapped out that had it from the beginning and didn't need any more instruction, they might be your enrichment group. I hope I said that the right way. So yes, those are the ones that you identify, but you are going to get IEP and 504 modification forms for the students who need IEPs and 504 accommodations. So that's a great, and that wasn't on my list. Thank you, William. So RTI is an educational based practice. A lot of your schools are already doing RTI. If you have, at Houston County where my students went to school, it was bear time. And it was time they would go on a special schedule for the day, and they would have a specific amount of time that you could go to any of your teachers that you needed either extra help or enrichment for. And that's the way they kind of put in RTI in the day. But this is also planned by group. You have a remediation group and you have an enrichment group, and you have a plan for these groups that's in your lesson plan. So your 504 and IEP accommodations, number 1, are federally mandated. And number 2, these are select students who are being served in special education or gifted settings. It's not, like you said, it's not the people that you identified. And they're not necessarily going to be in a group. So if I have Bob and Bob needs extra time, that does not necessarily put him in an RTI group. He might function in the tier 1, the 80% group, just fine as long as he gets extra time or preferential seating or whatever it is. But guys, Bob might also need enrichment or remediation and extra time. So you can put your IEP or 504 students into an RTI Tier 2 enrichment or remediation, but it's not the same thing. All right, I think we're getting wrapped up here. So I already talked about using musictheory.net with headphones on personal devices, and I like that one because it automatically counts at the top. I've seen some elementary and middle school teachers who will use with the young ones the what is it, the Google Chrome Lab. And some of those will actually count too, or you can create a file and message the file to save it or message it to your teacher. So you can have a work sample from these things on your personal device. And I like that because, like I said, when I'm supervising, if I'm in a situation, and I have been in the situation where it's just me, there's no parapros, there's no parent volunteers, there's no music techs, it's just me, then I can have my group over here on their personal devices working independently while I'm working with the Tier 1 80% group. So your enrichment group could also compose using MuseScore or looping software. Now here we go. These guys down here are our 504 and IEP. T. Smith needs extended time, and that is time and a half. So when you get extended time, you will usually get how much time? Do they need double time? You know, do they need whatever? P. Davis will test with a paraprofessional. So I do have students, and sometimes that overlaps with extended time. So that student doesn't test in the music classroom. That student goes to this paraprofessional over here, and they test there. Now in music, because sometimes we're using the metallophones and the vibraphones, the paraprofessional will come to us. But that might mean that P. Davis has to test outside of class time so that they can be in the class with the paraprofessional. Now, J. Jones is going to have the instructions in Spanish, right? So do you see the difference between the RTI groups at the top and the 504 and IEP learners at the bottom? Now, it might be that any one of those people either needs to be in enrichment or remediation, and they get this accommodation or modification. So they don't go together, but they also don't necessarily exclude one another. All right, so do you have any ideas that you've done?
I mean, one thing that I do in my class, and I don't know if it's more of like, because I haven't even thought about like, like middle or high school level, like band or whatever in like years, but
That's okay.
or yeah, so for example, in my elementary classes, especially in like third through fifth grade, I utilize like the kids who are enriched and like have got it. A lot of times, like if I'm pairing them, I'll pair them with the kids who don't quite have it, because a lot of times, for me, like I see that maybe like those kids understand it, and if I just let them understand it and not do anything else with it, they get bored. But what they also like to do is they like to go and show other kids what to do and apply that like that. So that's kind of one way I apply that in my classroom.
Good. And just be careful. One of the things that we see in the gifted literature, and your enrichment kids aren't necessarily gifted.
Right.
But I think it goes for everybody. If a student does not want to be a helper, then don't force them to be a helper.
Right, right.
But yeah, if they're excited about doing it, then absolutely. All right, good. Any other ideas at the elementary level?
Might need to kind of think about that and kind of synthesize what we've been
That's all
talking
right.
about.
Yeah, you don't have to have all the answers.
Yeah. Are you gonna be at GMEA this year?
Yes, I'm
Yeah. I'm,
presenting on Saturday at 10, and we of course have the alumni lunch at noon on Friday at South
yeah,
Kitchen.
because a lot of things. I know we're on a call and it's like being recorded, so I don't want to. A lot of things that are very like school and like district based. I want to maybe be a little careful what I say like in a recorded conversation, but yeah,
That's okay.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely would like to think about some of this um and talk about it more at
Sure.
GMEA
Sure.
here
And,
because
if you have some
mhm,
things, once this is posted, you can definitely comment on the Facebook.
mhm,
Sorry, not the Facebook, but the
mhm,
Facebook post. And
right.
Mandy Gunter shared something with me a year or
Mhm,
so ago that what she does, and she's an ORF teacher. So when
mhm,
she's doing ORF instruments, that she puts the tier one people on the normal parts. And
mhm,
she might find somebody who's struggling and give them like a
mhm,
bass bar, and they just get like
right.
quarter notes or the ostinato, whatever it is. And she might
Mhm,
have somebody that's way ahead of everybody else, so she gives them like the obligato solo part or whatever.
mhm,
So she does enrichment and remediation just in her, like, in what we're
mhm,
doing. And I had never
right.
thought of that before. That's beautiful. So
Can you go back to the it was either the first or second slide. It was the one with the diagrams on it.
uh-huh.
Um, so I guess like one thought I kind of had when you're looking at Bloom's taxonomy, like you were saying how like we're usually at the application level, right? Um, how is like for example like at the top you have like create and evaluate and analyze. Um, so I was just kind of thinking, and I might not be able to like completely formulate the thought right now, but for example, like I know in the Georgia Standards of Excellence, like create and evaluate are like their own like subs like sections of standards. Is there a difference in like teaching like creation to the standard versus like following the taxonomy? If that makes does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes, it does. It's not
Okay.
different. So I
Okay.
would say, and I hope I'm hearing you right, and if I'm not, just ask again. So
Hmm.
if your class is at Create, then you have
Hmm.
somebody who needs enrichment, then maybe that person creates unassisted. So maybe
Hmm.
your 80% tier one group is creating together. Like you
Hmm.
said, that one person in a chair is a quarter note, two people in a chair is an eighth note. But
Hmm.
maybe your enrichment group is creating in some other way
Hmm.
where,
I think
'cause you're guiding this group, but you might not be guiding that group.
mhm, right. But I think also it's like because the way I'm supposed to also plan like my lessons and do like my curriculum, it's like I need to do specific like creation
Mm-hmm.
lessons. So like maybe it's more like what's the best way to consider like these tier 2 and 3 students and be able to get them to participate in those creation lessons if they don't necessarily have the understanding or application
So yeah,
down
so
with that. Yeah.
if your remediation groups, if your tier one group is in Create and you've got students who can't function up there, then
Hmm.
see where they are in your diagnostic. They might just need to drop down to apply, and they might,
Hmm.
but I like to use the taxonomy to guide me so that I'm not just lost. What does this person
Hmm.
need? And and I do
Hmm.
want to mention very quickly that tier three,
Hmm.
typically in RTI, is where we recommend people for gifted and special education testing. And then
Hmm.
they're actually pulled out for gifted or special education services. Your tier
Hmm.
three students in music are going to look just like your tier two students. They are not going to pull
Hmm.
your tier three students out of your music class for more music
Right.
training.
Right.
So, yeah, so in the music classroom, tier two and tier three are identical.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. And there's
Hmm.
no right way, William. There's no right way to
Hmm.
do this. I don't like right and wrong for teachers. I like effective and
Hmm.
ineffective. So, yeah,
Right.
just try something, and if it works, then that's right.
Hmm. And I feel like for me, like the topic of like differentiated instruction is kind of probably I would say like one of my weakest areas. And I find
Sure.
it's like the challenge with it for me personally is just like the time I'm given for planning versus like when I have all these other obligations at
Yes.
school versus like how like for example classes are structured and all of that. It can be like difficult for me to like a lot of times like when I'm teaching a lesson it's like on paper it looks like it's going to go one way and then I actually start doing it and it's like I'm
Yes.
being like thrown in like the lion's den or something like
Yes.
that.
Yes, and
Um,
especially in elementary school because you don't get any breaks.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think I
So,
understand. Yeah.
yeah, and the other thing, William, is do
Hmm.
one thing. You
Hmm.
know, you have to, like you said, you know, you don't have enough planning time and you're pulled every which way. And
Hmm.
then if you're like I was when I taught elementary school, the class coming in is already lined up, but the class going out, their teacher hasn't arrived yet. So there's
Hmm.
no time between classes to prepare. So think of one thing, you know, this week I'm going to do this for remediation or whatever it is and see how it
Hmm.
goes. Do it one time in one class and see how it goes. Don't try to do
Hmm.
everything all at once.
Gotcha.
All right. Anything else?
Not off the top of my head, and but I definitely like if I do think of things, I'll definitely bring it up at
Please
GMEA.
do. Yeah, thank you. Please do.
Hmm.
All right. Well, that's all I have for today. And so I
All
will
right.
see you in a couple weeks at GMEA. And like I said, you can
Absolutely.
also respond in the comments under the video.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.